All right, I've seen enough on the internet that I wanted to come on and do a video on this specifically. There's been a lot of talk on several different groups on Facebook, probably on some of the forums as well, but I'll be trying to post this video series or this video onto Facebook on the different groups that I've seen there to be some issues in. So buckle up, we're going to be talking a little bit about Ford suspensions today, mostly because of what I've been seeing, the questions I've been seeing asked on those groups. So here we go. Now, the question is, what should I do to improve the performance on my classic Ford suspension? And today we're going to be talking about specifically the double A-arm system like is on this 1965 Ranchero. If you have this type of suspension, then you will know what I'm talking about. And it's going to look just like this one looks, with a single lower arm, with a strut rod, upper A-arm, and a spring on top of the upper A-arm. Very simple setup and easy to modify, oddly enough, for a little bit better performance. Now, one of the first things you're going to want to do is to make sure that you buy brand new components, or that the components that are on the front end of your car are in decent condition. If they are not in decent condition, you're not going to get the suspension performance out of this vehicle that you want. So number one thing is to make sure it is either in really good condition or completely rebuilt with new components from any of the number of different places that you can buy suspension components for a classic Ford. The next thing that I would say to do is, beyond that, you're going to want to spend a little bit more money for things like the roller spring perch that I have here on this 65 Ranchero. This is a roller spring perch from the guys at Open Tracker Racing. It is a really nice piece for increasing the performance of your classic Ford, because what it does is it frees up the motion of that spring perch to go into whatever arc it needs to go into. The original Ford stuff is nice, but it is made with a high durotomy rubber that is vulcanized to the actual center stud on it that goes across and mounts to the upper control arm. That being the case, it's a little stiffer and a little less forgiving on road bumps and undulations. I find that the roller spring perches are probably the best bang for the buck that I've put into my 69 Fairlane that I have some of these same modifications made to. The next thing I think you probably ought to investigate, and especially if you have a car that is a 1966 on back, would be to go in and actually do the Shjelby drop on it. It benefits 1967 on up on a lot of these cars, but Ford kind of went in and modified the mounting position for the upper control arm after 1966. And on some models, we're going to call this an ish. And so it's not as big a deal. But the Shjelby drop does change a lot of things with camber actuation on the front end. It's not the ideal best, but it is the Klaus Arning Band-Aid that they applied to the 1966 and 65 Shjelbys. It did make a big difference, and there's an even deeper drop than doing the 1 inch, which is what I recommend for the street, and that is a 1 1/8 inch drop, but that drop is really, in my opinion, only for road race performance and things like that. You will end up chewing up ball joints, or you have to do a wedge kit to make the ball joint sit where it's supposed to. A lot of work, and I don't know if you really get enough sugar for your nickel, so to speak, when you do that update. Now what I'm showing you now is a shock absorber. Now this is a QA1 shock absorber, and then this is a Viking shock. These two companies both have a non-gas shock to use on the front of these cars. They are pretty expensive, but I will tell you right now that the performance out of the front of your car with one of those two types of non-gas shocks is going to be way better than what you're going to get out of a gas shock. Gas shocks actually do add spring rate to the front of the car because they're gas shocks. Now the GR2 KYBs are a little bit better than the original KYBs were, but they still are a gas shock, and they still do add spring rate to the front of the car. I know that gas shocks add spring rate because when we took them off and put the QA1s on the front of our 69 Fairlane wagon, the nose of the car dropped about 3/4 of an inch from where it was at. And now, since someone has gone in and cut a coil out of the spring on it, we are sitting very much lower than it would be in a stock spring condition, causing us to have fender rub issues and things like that. So those are something to think about. Speaking of springs, if your springs are worn out, if you have spring spacers and things like that in there, you'll want to go in and put a brand new set of springs on it. just get the GT springs. Don't go any bigger than that, because if you go in a bigger spring, it's just going to start riding like a buckboard and you're not going to be happy, because the thing you're going to want is a suspension that works in undulations on the ground and comes back from those jars pretty quickly and doesn't just beat the snot out of the chassis and you when you're going down the road. For us personally around here, we use Eaton Detroit because we love their product line. All their stuff is made right here in the United States. They can custom set up that spring for your classic car. If you call them and talk to them about what you're planning on doing with your car, they can set it up for you. Now, another thing that you can do to upgrade your front end in a lot of instances is to go in and add 3/8 of shims to this front bolt position on your upper control arm. Even on an older car like a 66 on back Mustang or Falcon, if you have the shims in here for alignment, add the 3/8 inch of shims to the front, and that will cause the control arm on this to move backwards a little bit, because you're actually rocking it out and causing that to fall back a little bit, giving you a little bit more caster. Caster is king when it comes to better handling front ends. Most of the time, Ford front ends are set up with almost 0 to 1 degree of caster. Doesn't give you a lot there, but it does make it easier to steer into a parking spot. Know that if you put the caster in here, you do the Shjelby drop, and then you put the 3/8 inch of shims in there, you are going to have a much harder time putting this thing into a parking space. If you have olive oil arms, then you're going to have a problem. If you have Popeye arms, you should be good to go. All right, now I'm going to talk a little bit about strut rods and alignment. I'm going to break those into two little compartments, if you will. Number one, strut rods. Always replace the bushings on your strut rods with a high durotomy rubber bushing. Do not, I repeat, not put urethane bushings on a stock strut rod. And that is so that your performance on that front end, because basically as the car is going through road changes, it's pushing on that strut rod and pulling on it through range of motion. It will cause a loose feeling front end if those are not in good condition. If they are cracked at all, if they look a little bit substandard, replace them. If they look dry, replace them, put new ones on there. It's always a good idea, and it will save you, and plus they're not really that expensive. Now I will say this, the ones that we have here on our 1965 Ranchero are actually ones that we got from RRS for a show we did a little while back, and this is what I would say if you were going to go urethane, please go out and do something like these strut rods that is designed for that fact. Now I'm going to do this. I'm going to talk about what the alignment effects are. What I'm finding these days is that it is really hard to take these old cars with the shim style front end on them, where the upper control arm is shimmed out, in order to attain the camber that you want to have. You can't find places that are willing to do it or even know how to do it. So there's a twofold answer to this. Number one, if you have an early car that has a non-adjustable strut rod, and you'll know that because the plate backs right up into the rod. There is no threading on the rod out beyond the plate on toward the back of the car. If you have one like that, get adjustable strut rods. That'll allow them to adjust your caster. And then go to Open Tracker Racing and get their camber kit that they sell, which welds in, and that is the one disadvantage in it, is that it has to be welded in. Weld in camber kit, and basically what that'll allow you to do is to take it to any shop in the United States and get the front end aligned. Now you're only going to probably do that 2 or 3 times in the life of the car if you do it right the first time, but it's a good idea to have that stuff there, because then if you go anywhere in the United States, you can throw it up on an alignment machine and tell them, I want 3 degrees of caster, 0 camber, and 1/16 inch toe. And hopefully they can plug that into their machine on their little keyboard and make it right for you. If you don't have a place like I've got here in the Augusta area that does really old school alignment, they don't even have a Hunter machine, then you need to do the camber thing, because it's just going to be easier for you to get the front end aligned on the car. All right, so the last thing I'm going to talk about here is stiffening up the chassis. One of the problems you're going to run into a lot of times, especially on these early Falcons, if it had a 6-cylinder in it, there is no torque box strengthening in the car. We're looking at doing a video on how to strengthen that up based off some of the things that a friend of ours in Australia told us we could do. So we probably will be doing a video on Manic Mechanic on how to strengthen the early Falcon and Mustang chassis that were 6-cylinder chassis. But even with a V8, things that you can do on a Fairlane chassis, pretty much everything is good to go after 1965. 1966 on up, Ford did a fairly good job of stiffening the chassis up to make that car not a wobbly weasel. They put bracings underneath the aprons here. They went in and did stuff with the engine cradle underneath. It wasn't quite that way in some of the other years. If you have a 60 to 65 Falcon, you're golden as far as the upper brace is concerned. Don't remove those welded in braces. They are really good at doing their job. But I would say that you should add the Le Mans style undercarriage brace, the engine brace that goes underneath the car. We did a video on that, on how to install that here on Man It Mechanic a while back. That is probably one of the better things you can do, because what you're going to do is to reduce the chassis pull whenever the car is trying to go through corners and it's pulling out to one side or the other. That will keep the entire chassis centered up. If you lack the original export braces in your Falcon, or the braces in your Falcon, go get an export brace. You don't have to go in and put the originals back in there, even though you might want to. And if you want to, they're probably available somewhere out there in the market. But I will say that it is the good way to get better performance out of the car. 60s Mustangs, by all means. 60 Cougars, export brace. I almost always do them, because I will find a lot of times on those cars that the top of the shock towers have somewhat collapsed in, and you'll want to jack those out. We did a video on that a while back on Cam's car, and he said it just changed the way the car handled after that, because everything's back where it's supposed to be. So, export brace, really good idea. Make sure the cross brace on your Mustang is still in there, or your Cougar. If that's not in there, then you're going to have some of the same problems as the Falcons have, and you'll want to go and try to source one of those. I believe you can still get those from the guys at National Parts Depot for your Mustang. All right, one last thing I want to talk about here before we go away is Swaybars. In the market right now, in the classic car market, there's not a ton of stuff available. The Mustang line has a little bit more than anybody else, but you're going to be stuck somewhere in the neighborhood of a 1-inch front sway bar for almost all performance applications. Now the Fairlane is even bigger than that. Most Fairlanes run a 1 1/8 inch bar. I do find that you can run into a problem with the Fairlane wanting to bust the sway bar mounts out of the car under hard cornering. Don't ask me how I know that. I went in and did a video a long time ago about how to fix that by using the 70 Mustang sway bar mounts, because those are designed more for the Boss 302 to hold up under a bigger sway bar and bigger, fatter tires, and the road grip that can provide you. So look into that possibly. Check out it'll be in the description below, and also a line link to it is here, so you can go just look it up, buy off the copy. But a bigger sway bar will always help. Urethane end links and urethane center links, which most of them already come with that, and you should be able to go around the corner with some amount of a palm. It is not going to be as good as an aftermarket suspension system, but if you're a guy who doesn't want to spend the money on an aftermarket suspension system, then it's a great way for you to get in and start making the car handle better than it would have handled before. All right, that's our show for this week, folks. We are out of here. I know this is a little short episode. Cam's not here today. We did this on a Sunday because I just kept seeing a lot of people writing in, asking the same question on different groups, so I thought I would come in here and address it in a video and just drop it in a bunch of different locations, including here on YouTube. So do me a favor, while you're thinking about all that, think about helping us out on Patreon. On Patreon, it is a great way for you to help me, help Darren grow into being a great video editor and do the things that he needs to do around here. I will say that we do monthly meetings. I'm going to start reinstituting a few things on the Patreon group that will be benefiting you guys. We're going to be doing bi-weekly, if I can get my brain wrapped around it, maybe a weekly little thing where I just post up a thought of mine. The first one I'm going to be having going up here pretty soon is about our new Ferguson tractor that we got, that we'll be doing something on another show that I'm going to open up right here on this channel. But all that aside, if we have done anything to help you out in the last few years to restore a classic car, you might consider putting a little bit of money toward us every month. It doesn't have to be at the $10 a month level, which is where you get monthly meetings with me on Zoom. It can be just a couple of bucks just to say thank you for what we do. It helps me to pay Darren because I'm trying to teach him that this is not a communist state, that we do have to bring in capital in order to finance work. I am not the federal government. Another thing I'm going to talk about is super thanks. You know we love super thanks. We just aren't that crazy about the name. Super thanks is the best way for you to tell us one time that we have done a video for you that you said, mind blown, I didn't know that, I liked this video, here's some money, okay? And we'll put your name up at the bottom of the thing here somewhere that says, hey, Harry Snotforth gave us 45 bucks for, you know, whatever we did for Harry Snotforth. So, check out Super Thanks. It's a great way to support us. Do me a favor, be kind to each other, love on each other, treat each other nice. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you next time on Autorestomod. It's weird doing that by myself because I usually have Cam here, and I don't today. I have Joseph, who's behind the camera. He's waving like you can see him. 13-year-olds. Facial tick. And 13-year-olds. Wonder if it's the same problem. I'm fine now. Really, fine. Okay.